We're live. Hey, everybody, welcome. This is the first insider interview, and my friend
First one.
and poet and colleague and featured on the new Netflix show Flint Town,
That's right, baby.
Eric Kieb is with
Oh,
us. Eric, thanks.
my episode.
So over the course of Lent, I said to all of my followers that I would write at least a stanza an evening. And I think I made it to 40. There was a couple of times when I had to do like 7 in a row on one night, but Eric said he would be willing to give some feedback and do a little kind of questioning and response and perfecting of some of those today. And I gave him some lyrics that I tentatively titled Wonder and Wander. And these have made their way into the real world, Eric, a little bit. I went to preach and sing a little bit at Albion College's chapel, and I subjected them to these already. And there were some moments where I really should have done this conversation before I took it to that conversation.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious as to what the musical pattern would be to it. I was trying to, it was one of the hardest things for me is like, okay, how is he strumming? What's his drum? Is he picking it? Is he strumming it? Is it?
Because you couldn't really see it in the lyrics. Yeah.
No. That's cool.
What'd you think? Where do you want to start?
What I just did is I just went sort of systematically through it. I just I cut and pasted it from your email to a Word doc, and then I just used a different color font to throw in some of my thoughts and musings, with each verse. I did the chorus just once because it's repetitive, so I wasn't gonna do it in once. But yeah, so that's how I did it. So yeah, I mean, you're the writer.
Okay, well,
you go verse by verse if you want to.
Well, I think people have been. I think people might be interested in a couple of things, and I think you name one of them, which is where do you see the musicality coming out of this? So these aren't just designed to be poems; they do have that kind of next life, which is as lyrics in a song. So, any feedback you have on that, kind of what ideas you thought you might have, or what kind of song this might sound like, would be, I think, interesting. And secondly, as lyrics or as kind of as poetry, the themes that you see and the images that you see, I think, are another particular area that I'd be interested in your feedback.
Sure. For me, as I read through this, and I think even in the email that you sent me, you sort of taglined it, but I actually didn't realize it until I went back and read the email again. I had a total like Jesus Wilderness Experience vibe song. And again, as it's written through a Latin discipline, that would make sense to me. So for me, as I think of the musicality of the song, there should be, if there isn't, I would expect to hear maybe some minor chordings, just something that doesn't fall quite as softly on the ear, because really it's a piece about, I don't know, to me, life coming through chaos or testing or struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So, if this was sort of just plucked really beautifully, I'd be like, I don't know if I believe it, because
just auto harp.
Yeah, I mean, because there's you got barrenness, you got brambles, you got grifters. One of my favorite lines in the whole thing, I don't want to jump too far ahead, is sail now into fortunes gained by grace, not greed. I just think that's a great line.
Oh, thanks.
And so for me, yeah, the chord, the musicality would strike the ear, maybe I don't want to say in an offensive way, but in a way that maybe it's like, ooh, I can feel the struggle in the music.
Any artists, albums, or songs that are already out there that you listen to that you?
Yeah, I thought that was coming next. I'm like, crap. Anything? Can I see crap on YouTube Live?
Oh yeah, I think you can.
I think this is going to be so trite. Flood by Jars of Clay. I mean, that's a clearly a song. They get to that driving, chorus.
Sure.
You could just imagine sort of water coming in.
A bit of tortured voices too.
Yeah, a bit of tortured voices.
Uh-huh.
death metal. No, I'm just kidding. This is a death metal song. A lot of grunting and screaming and pyrotechnics. Um, but I think, again, just pulling something off the top of my head, that something like that, where you expect the music to match the lyrics, because, for me, that helps me believe a song.
Mm.
If the music matches the lyrics, I go, yeah, this is believable. If it's it could be beautiful lyrics, but if the music doesn't set the backdrop for me, I go, I don't know what was going on in the artist's mind when they wrote this song, because
it can pull against or it can complement.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, this one is, I would imagine it to be, you wouldn't just sit there with a glass of wine sipping this going, oh, this is so beautiful. You'd be like, oh, wow, this is a struggle. And maybe it would move and sort of cascade through it up and down. And then at the end, maybe, end quietly, because again, you have these great lines of bend your blades and bullets, dismember your designs. So it's sort of, it's like a sort of like a tsunami. And then it begins to just sort of recede a bit at the end. And I'm looking over here just so people know I'm looking this way, because this is where my sheet is with all my notes on it. So
yeah,
I'm not distracted out the window going, what's over there? When I wrote, looking at some of the lyrics.
You mentioned a couple of favorite lines. What were some of your least favorite lines?
I don't know that I had least favorite. There's some questions I threw in, because I had to actually. I went and I did some definitions, because I thought I knew what you were saying, but I wasn't quite sure.
Oh no! You're pointing out that I think I might have been writing this next to a thesaurus page outside.
No. The second verse, again, great stuff. I love the imagery here, because it's very vivid. To me, anyway, it's evocative. It just pulls images very easy. You had, cast now over newly minted barrenness, vicious brambles sown by anxious grifts. So I thought I knew what grifts was. So I went to the internet, Google, where you try to get definitions when you don't have a dictionary with you.
Sure.
And, again, the grift is sort of someone who's, on the sly, taking things from people. And I wondered, should it be grifter or grifters instead of grifts?
Well, and in that next verse, you get the scoundrel.
Yeah.
So it is kind of personalized somehow in
right.
someone. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then, again, that next verse, you got at first I read it going, should this be best friend? No, I think it is best fiend. Just looking at the context.
Is that too cute?
No.
Okay.
No, because I think for me, when it catches your eye and when it catches your ear, again, when I talk about the musicality of the song, how the tonality should be like, ooh, it's just catching me. This is the same thing. Do you really mean best fiend? And
I'm just a little more susceptible to dad jokes now that I have a 3-year-old, so I want to be, a little careful.
No, and let me share the note I wrote under that verse. I wrote, keep your enemies close. Seems to me like those who have the power to do us the most damage are those within whom we live in closest proximity to. I put sort of like Judas and Jesus. The one that got the deed done wasn't a scribe, wasn't a Pharisee, wasn't a religious expert, but a lackey from within the very community of those who lived in closest proximity to Jesus. So that's what that whole best fiend image just launched me sort of down that interpretive path.
Gotcha.
And then the Hellion household guest I thought was great too. Again, it just you start out with that line and then you just reinforce the notion. Scoundrel tardy renter. I think of bad tenants who come in and trash the place when they're supposed to
still on the couch. What's
hold on just a second. I got an interruption.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Just call. People don't listen.
Yeah, and just as we're kind of making our way through the text, I was writing this at the beginning of Lent, and so my attention is always focused on the most literal kind of part of the Lenten experience, this kind of 40 days in the desert for Jesus, coming out of Ash Wednesday liturgies and things like that. and had been tasked by a songwriting group that I'm in to write a song about the devil.
Okay.
So he's starting to pick some of that up in these particular verses.
Oh, for sure. Without a doubt. Just easily.
Mhm. I hadn't thought about the Judas connection. That's interesting, particularly after the Jesus Christ Superstar on TV the other night.
Oh, yeah, I didn't catch it. Was it good?
Oh man, yeah. I didn't realize that there's such good theology in that, such good biblical. Like, just I think they got Palm Sunday really right.
Yeah.
Which is this like, not just really happy exuberance, but it's like too happy,
Right. Okay.
and too exuberant about the crowd's vision of what they want him to be.
I'll have to go catch that because I
Yeah.
just didn't have time. I don't think I was home.
Yeah, and yeah, just I would recommend it. And in general, I would say get the vinyl of the original '70s cast, because that's the only way that it sounds the best to me.
All right.
But hey, John Legend, he can't do wrong with him.
He's got the pipes, he can sing.
Yeah, exactly. Any other particular points of confusion?
Not really. I mean, I thought that that was probably the only place where I thought, I think I know what he means here. I think everything else, to me, anyways, from my read for it, was pretty self-explanatory. I mean, again, it's like each verse reinforced where I thought you were going.
Oh, okay, sure. So they kind of build together.
Oh, for sure. I mean, totally.
In general, are you a fan of music that where the lyrics are kind of? I feel like there's a spectrum, which is kind of this Bob Dylan, super accessible words, right? Okay. And that's not to say that he doesn't present complicated topics, sure, right? And then they're on this other side, which I don't exactly know who I'd say is the best example of, but it's like you're not really sure what the words are, what they kind of mean, but they just work somehow.
Yeah.
And I find myself being pulled back and forth between wanting to do either of those. I don't know, what is your inclination? Which kind of song do you prefer to listen to?
I don't know if I have a specific either or, as much as for me it's important that a song tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
If I can follow the arc of the story, yeah, you can lose me once in a while, maybe in the metaphor, but if it's a clear arc of the story, then I'm there. Yeah, but get back to Bob Dylan, brilliant storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
Dash, brilliant storyteller. Not complex in their, imagery or words necessarily, but definitely crafted a story.
Yeah.
And so in this one, I tend to be a sort of a, I don't know, contemplative poet. So I like when things at first blush don't seem to go together. You're like, oh,
a little mysterious.
Two images. I'm not sure. So I don't mind doing heavy lifting, try to interpret things. But for me, I think this would definitely lean in the other direction that you were talking about, the other end of the spectrum, and that it makes you stretch for it a bit. But it's still, at the same time, for me, it tells a compelling story. Once I got in and I was like, okay, yeah, verse 2, we're on this theme. Okay, yes. I was like, yep, there's a story. It's telling a story.
All right. Eric, thanks so much. Are you going to be sending me those notes?
If you want them, I will. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think talking through it is great. I'm really glad to share this with patrons on Patreon, and for people that are looking for this kind of insider look at things. But just for my own workshopping of these lyrics, I'd really I'd covet them. So,
no, I'll send them as soon as you're done.
I mentioned that you do some poetry. You're involved in preaching every week, leading church that's just on fire up there. That you're in, TV shows. Where can people find you? What you're doing?
I love TV shows. That's right. Yeah, one show for maybe 90 seconds. I didn't even know I was being filmed.
What's your agent's number? So if people want to call you for that.
That's a funny story. We actually, I was doing a funeral for one of our members. That was her mom, and her brother is Officer Frost, who's in Flint Town.
Yeah.
And like 2 weeks ago, I was just talking to the husband where I'd called to just check on him, and he was like, "Hey, do you know you're in a documentary?" I'm like, "No." And then he says Flint Town. I'm trying to figure out, how am I in? So yeah, episode 4. My episode is Death and Homicide. So
Oh,
it's always good for a preacher to be in an episode called Death and Homicide. Gives me some street cred.
yeah, absolutely.
But, yeah, I'm lead pastor at Grace Church, and we're a multi-site congregation. We did that about almost 2 years ago now here in Bay City. I have a lot of fun. Do stuff in both of the campuses, and then we do a gathering called Levi's Table in a local eatery after hours, a couple times a month, which is fun.
That theological conversation type thing.
Yeah, not a sermon per se, or not a service, but have a theme for the night. I present the theme and then dismiss us so we can sort of stuff our faces and talk about, how that impacts our life. Nice. And, we get about 30 to 40 people, give or take, and it's fun. We have a good time.
Nice. Nice. And people can find stuff about your church.
Yeah, it's churches. We have, again, I didn't put the website together, the web address. It's sort of long, but it's www.baycitygracechurch.org.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll put it in the links so that people can just click on it. baycitychurch.org.
Yep. Bay City Grace Church.
Bay City Grace Church.
Yeah, it's like so long. Why can't we just go like BCGC? Yeah, baycitygracechurch.org. And, we have links to messages and what we're doing here in the city and all that. It's been a lot of fun. I'll be starting my 3rd year in July. And I got a Facebook presence and a Twitter presence and an Instagram presence. And so you can find me. Usually it's ED Kieb on all of those.
All right.
Looks just Eric Kieb. You can find me that way.
And the outshot is, after looking at this song, what's your favorite song about the devil?
What's my? I'm gonna go old school. Secular wise, devil went down to Georgia.
Yeah.
But going back to this again, the sort of singer songwriter in the Christian genre, because Christian music always hasn't been. Well, it's mostly sucked. Let's just be honest. But Keith Green's "No One Believes in Me Anymore." He's a sort of the Billy Joel of the old 1970s Christian music world. He was one of the artists I didn't think sucked, but he's got this great song about it's first person narrative from the devil's perspective about his job's so easy because no one believes in him anymore.
I have some homework to do, but that sounds great. I'll have to go look that up right now.
Song. It's really got a nice sort of riff to it. It's sort of like you can imagine the sort of the devil with this happy little celebration, like, hey, this is like taking candy from a baby.
Taking a little bit from like Screw Tape Letters. Kind of
Yep.
Nice.
So
all right, everybody. Be sure to go check that out. Keith Green.
He's dead now.
Okay.
Tragic plane crash. It was, I think, in the 70s or 80s. I mean, he's been gone for a while.
Oh my gosh. Well, check out that song. It lives on.
Yes.
Eric, thanks so much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem.
Peace.
All right, peace. I don't know how to get out of here now.
I don't know either.
Oh, I'm trapped.
Let me press this big red button that says stop. Hold on.